About 2 weeks ago, I appeared on Shaun Attwood's show where I basically named all of the men whom Virginia Roberts Giuffre had stated she was lent out to by J.E. However, the one name that was not mentioned and which we're going to talk about today is Donald Trump. This is Kirby Sommers, and we are going to delve into perhaps the person who has been protected from various sources as far as being named as someone who spent time with the persons, because there are men and female, boys and girls connected to the JE situation. So, yesterday on November 12th, the House Oversight Committee dropped a lot of emails from Jeffrey Epstein. These are between Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein, and Michael Wolff. Several really interesting emails. Among these, I found one of them to be much more valuable, I think, in terms of exposing what's really going on and the lack of transparency in the Trump administration with regard to the so called Epstein list or Epstein documents or Epstein files, whatever you want to call them. In any event, in this email dated, let's see if there's a date here, it's 2011, it's from J.E. Maxwell back and forth, and it reads, I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Virginia spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, he goes on to say 75% there. Ghislaine responded with, I have been thinking about that. So I also think I want to bring to the attention of everyone who is listening to this uh, that Virginia, when initially questioned about Al Gore and about who she met, let's say, while on one of the properties, and in this case, it was the island, uh, she was deposed several times. And in one of these, she was specifically asked about meeting Al Gore. And her answer at the time, and I will be clarifying this for you guys, it's a little hazy at where that took place. I mean, we're going back a long time ago. But I do remember one thing about him. I thought he was a wonderful guy who loved his wife, and they spent the entire time like there was nothing else around them. It was just those two. It was a dinner table, a long dinner table with people around, but they were just a lovely, just watching them as a couple. I remember thinking, but I mean, in any event, that he's somebody that she would definitely vote for. He's just somebody that loves his wife that much. What I think a lot of people are unaware of is that David Boies, who we see here representing Virginia, and in fact, he went on to represent most of the women who stepped forward alleging that they too were, let's say, victims of the JE situation. We see David Boies right there in the middle with Virginia at his side. Now, Boies also represented former Vice President Al Gore in connection with the litigation regarding the 2000 election, because it was his stance that the vote was stolen from him. Now, that's a different animal entirely. I went down that rabbit hole, and if you go down it enough, you will see that there is some connection and some validity to Gore's claim. And actually, it's something that connects to Leslie Wexner in Ohio. And I don't know if any of you have gone down that rabbit hole. If you have, let me know in the comment section. But we're going to, for the matter of this podcast, we're going to just focus on the very likely possibility that, in fact, Trump indeed was with Virginia Giuffre back when she was Virginia Roberts. Let's recall that it was at Trump's Mar-a-Lago where she was first spotted by Ghislaine Maxwell, and from there she was then taken to J.E.'s house on the very same day, whereby she was immediately done things to. I have to be very careful about what I say on this platform, obviously. So what I know about Virginia is that David Boies had a lot of sway over what he allowed her to say. And so I'm just going to let you know that by the time David Boies, J. Stanley Pottinger became involved with Bradley Edwards, who was initially her attorney, Donald Trump had already begun his campaign to become president of the United States. That happened in 2015. Now, the White House yesterday, with the release of these emails, revealed that Virginia is the victim who allegedly spent hours with Trump, and this is written and confirmed in these emails. Donald Trump, we know, had a teenage modeling agency, is known to have made a lot of inappropriate comments. Now, I just want to say, for clarity's sake, that I know Donald Trump. Donald Trump and my abuser's family were very close. They, in fact, my abuser's family with Aristotle Onassis helped Donald Trump in the building of Trump Tower. And what I know about Trump is that he cannot be near an attractive female of any age without doing something that's inappropriate. So therefore, I believe, I'm going to share a lot of other information with you regarding the sort of the hold that David Boies had over Virginia and how she may have tweaked her answers insofar as not saying anything bad about either Trump, who was president and would have had a lot to do with her future or her ability to stay alive. She was very much aware that she basically was a target for a lot of very powerful men. And while we know that she named and then sued the man, formerly the prince, who is now known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, she did not necessarily name every single person. And some of these she may have maybe not remembered their name, but some of them, like in the case of Trump and in the case of others, I kind of know that she was instructed not to disclose much, if anything at all, so that while Virginia said that, oh, he couldn't have been friendlier, referring to their limited interaction, there's no way that Donald Trump, who has a very short attention span and whose mind is usually on the S word, there is no way that he would have spent hours with Virginia in J.E.'s house without doing something to Virginia, so that the name that is being withheld as being one of the people to whom J.E. lent out this wonderful woman who is no longer with us and who ultimately was eaten up by this machine. And by the way, the machine has always been connected to politicians, and specifically to the people who sit in the Oval Office. You cannot get to the Oval Office without being a psychopath. In order to be in the Oval Office or to have a position of power in any field, you have to have the ability to disassociate and to have multiple personalities. So when we think about mind control, all of us have been mind controlled through various forms, through our schools, through the books we read, through the movies we see. I think we can all agree on that. So we have witnessed trauma with the events like the horrible day in September, on the 11th day, uh, with so much of the stuff that is put before our eyes, we are traumatized. However, we don't become psychopaths. The people who rise to power and the people who are in the world of the elite, they are unable to feel empathy or to be normal human beings. I mean, they're literally psychopaths and they will lie. Their only objective is me, to make as much money as they can, to protect themselves at any cost. So they will lie. However, Virginia was very much, I'm going to have to use the word, handled by David Boies. Now, I just explained to you how Boies represented Al Gore. So that, for example, and I'm just going to use this as an example, when Virginia was like that, Gore was at the island with his wife and they were an adoring couple. What I want you to know, and you can find this out for yourself doing any search on any search engine, is that Gore was exposed as having extramarital affairs. Moreover, I have a very reliable, incredible source who is really looked up to in the intelligence field. He was a child prodigy. He became involved as a second generation, possibly a third generation intelligence asset. I'm not going to name him clearly, but he explained to me how Gore and his wife Tipper and Hillary and Bill, and although this is not about Hillary or Bill, you might as well know that, they used to share and have these wife swapping parties, which really was something that everyone was doing in the 1960s, 1970s, and that sort of um, uh, sharing of partners and being open in an S manner uh, continued. It didn't matter if somebody became the president, it didn't matter if they were the vice president. That's what these people did. Donald Trump is no exception. Now, we know that he ran on the premise that he was going to release the so-called JE files. He then backstepped, and it has been a very long and incredibly difficult road for the American people, those who continue to be interested in the exposure of the so-called transportation ring. And by the way, for those of you who are new, first, thank you for being here. Second, please know that on this platform, I have to use code words and or initials for certain names, so that what I see happening here is that David Boies, who we see at this restaurant, and by the way, this is a restaurant in Harlem. Uh, it's called Rao's, Rao apostrophe S. And we see him here with Bill Clinton to his left, Hillary Clinton, Harvey Weinstein, and his then wife. And of course, They're very close friends, and not only was Boies the attorney for Al Gore, hence the reason why Virginia did not say anything negative about Al Gore. But it's my understanding that Gore, and if you look at the flight records, you will see that he was on the so-called Lolita Express several times, not just once, but several times. But here in this photograph, we can see Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Harvey Weinstein, his then wife. And I'm telling you that, Boies had a conflict of interest. He should not have taken on the JE survivors. However, he is a deep state asset. So on my channel, I expose deep state assets like I did in my previous podcast where I exposed Diane Sawyer. Attorneys also play a very, very large role, and specifically somebody like David Boies. And so Virginia always explained to me how she would present things to Boies and he would then say to her, no, you can't do this, or you cannot do that, or you have to do this. So he was more like a Svengali type figure. And she was made to believe that she could trust him. However, she was also told who she could, let's say, name as someone who was part of this world and someone who had done something to her, someone to whom she used the phrase lent out to. However, in some cases, she didn't do it. However, the emails are big news today. And while a lot of people are focusing on a lot of the other emails regarding a lot of other people, including Bill Gates, so on and so forth, the one that really took my attention in a big, big way was the fact that Donald Trump spent hours at JE's house with Virginia. And again, Donald Trump is known to have said inappropriate things about both his daughters when they were very young. He is known for his inappropriate behavior with women wherever he comes across one. Uh, and by the way, Donald Trump is not alone in this behavior. There are a lot of very powerful men who behave like this, but he happens to be president of the United States, and he happens to be the person basically poo-pooing the JE files and saying, are we still talking about this guy? Clearly, there's something that he wishes would not be known. Now, Michael Wolff, who many of you have heard about, is a well-regarded author, and he has stepped forward to share the fact that during the many times that he was invited and visited JE's house here in Manhattan at the 71st Street location, one of the many houses and one of the many things that was provided to JE by Leslie Wexner, then CEO of the Limited L Brands, and it's now changed its name for reputation management reasons. Now it's called Bath and Body Works. And by the way, all of these companies, you should boycott. You should consider boycotting these companies, in addition, of course, to Victoria's Secret. In any event, Michael Wolff has claimed that JE showed him some photographs of Donald Trump with young, almost nude girls sitting on his lap. And so they were topless, these young girls. And in one of the photographs, Wolff has alleged that he saw that there was a stain on Trump's pants. Now and that the girls in the photo are pointing and laughing. And that's not something that happens innocently. To get back to the point, it shows that it is very likely that Donald Trump is one of the men who has not been named. And today, I'm going to say that Virginia most likely was let's say, making happy Trump, who stayed there for several hours. Now, before closing, I want to address the fact that Sky Roberts, Virginia's father, is known to have S8 his daughter commencing at the time that she was 7, along with his friend, whom she was forced to call uncle. Okay. And they were swapping little girls. It's really disgusting, but it also uh, speaks to how pornography and how the masses have been conditioned to feel that it is okay to have this kind of situation between a father and a daughter, and with children who are not of age of either, whether they be girls or boys. It just, our world, our civilization has become desensitized to something like this. And then there are some people clearly it doesn't happen to, but it happens more often than not. So that I heard Virginia's brother, Sky Roberts, speak about the fact that his father looked at Virginia as an object, not like his daughter, but more like an object. And that when he took her to Mar-a-Lago at the age of 16, because that's how old she was when she was first introduced to Mar-a-Lago, that he made it his business to introduce Virginia to Donald Trump on the second day of her employment. And that he did so because she was pretty. Here, I'm going to put up a photograph of what Virginia looked like at the time. Very pretty, long blonde hair. She had already been horrifically abused. She didn't know anything else. In her mind, she's thinking, I'm going to be embarking on a new life. This is going to be great for me. I'm going to learn a skill, and perhaps I can build on that skill. However, according to her brother, he brought her to Mar-a-Lago for the very specific purpose of showcasing her to Donald Trump. We know that it was her father who drove her to J.E.'s house. Now, J.E. had also been someone who frequented Mar-a-Lago with Ghislaine Maxwell. And I know a lot of you who have left comments have wondered whether or not Sky Roberts, who we now know through various sources was paid by JE. I would think that it's a form of hush money, but typically you don't take money from someone who's doing terrible things to your daughter. But he took hush money, and many of you have pointed out, well, he must have known what was going to happen at JE's house. That's a question that initially I didn't think was possible. Looking at how the pieces of this puzzle are coming together, I think that a lot of you were probably very right, that he did know, that he traded on her beauty. I know that, I was treated in that manner. I was the pretty girl. I had sisters. My mother, from the time I was very young, said very pointedly to me that, as the pretty one, I was going to marry well. So I was going to marry a rich man. I was going to buy her a yellow house. I went on to write about my experience being transportationed and becoming the private slave of one of these billionaire, one of the richest men in the world, part of this elite circle that we are understanding. Slowly but surely, we're getting a bigger grasp on what's really going on behind closed doors. And so, Virginia, as the pretty little blonde girl, of course, is going to then be used as um, a way to garner for, let's say, somebody like Sky Roberts, her father, allegedly, to garner uh, a certain status and perhaps money, which is what he obtained. So I am very curious to hear how you guys feel about the fact that, from my perspective, from where I sit, what this email basically says regarding the fact that it is Virginia who spent many hours with Donald Trump at J.E.'s house, that she, because of David Boies' relationship and knowing the political landscape, very likely instructed Virginia never mention him. Now, what I also know is that if you look through Virginia's tweets, you will see that she says, I am neither, she doesn't support the political landscape, so she was neither a Republican nor a Democrat, that she didn't really believe in either one of the two sides. So, for those of us who have been involved with the very powerful uh, and that would go also for other people in other countries. We know that the political parties are meant to divide us. So divide and conquer is the way that they continue to get ahead. They pit us against each other so that we do not focus our attention on them. So that if you look again through Virginia's tweets, you will find that she wasn't for Trump, but she did think, she sort of believed that he was going to be transparent, and that's really all she wanted. I don't think Virginia knew uh, how ingrained this is in our political system. So, as many of you know, the newer books that I've written are Gerald Ford, MK Ultra, and how that connects to the podcast I uploaded a few days ago, and I'll leave a link to that below, connecting to the modeling industry, to Ford models, how this again is ingrained and connects to the intelligence apparatus of the United States, of the United Kingdom, of Israel. Uh, this has just been part of it. So I do not believe that either David Boies, Bradley Edwards, or J. Stanley Pottinger, who told Maria Farmer, by the way, that he was a CIA agent, and who you can find information on. He worked uh, in various administrations uh, against the American people, not for the American people, but you have to really go back and read the articles and look at history and see what really happened. These men are multi-generational. The abuse is multi-generational. It's not new. Trump is the one person who has been caught in the crosshairs, so to speak. And really, he opened the door himself. He was the one who basically said, "Oh, I'm for this." And then clearly he's been fighting everything that comes up, including the birthday book, so on and so forth. However, we know from his own experience and from watching him outside of the JE sphere how he behaves. And so, therefore, I'm going to just close this with the way I started. Donald Trump is one of the men that has been unnamed, to whom Virginia Roberts Giuffre was lent. With that, I look forward to your commentary. Until next time.